Shalom and good evening. Amen. So good evening and a Chodesh Tov. Our topic for tonight is a Torah and Derekh Eretz. What is the center of our lives? So this is a very big question, and the answer isn't so simple. What do you think? What is the center of our lives?
It says Derekh Eretz Kadma the Torah. So I think Derekh Eretz is the center of our lives because it's dependent. Torah is dependent on Derekh Eretz.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So first we have to define what a Derekh Eretz is, right? So Derekh Eretz, there could be many meanings to it. It could mean, as you were said, good deeds, and we find character traits and Menschlichkeit, right?
But it's also translated as like making a living.
Right. That's right. Worldly matters. So it's a question. What is Derech Eretz? But in this issue, we are going to go according to the interpretation that a Derech Eretz is a secular study, is a profession, making a living, and Rabbi
Torah and Derekh Eretz.
Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, you mean?
Oh.
Yes, and a Rabbi Azriel Hilzheimer. Both of them lived in Germany about 150 years ago, and they had to deal with the Reform movement, which was a very strong movement at the time, and in Germany, in those days, it was the center of culture for the whole world, and many young Jews were assimilating and going into the Reform movement. So Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch said that we have to create a movement called Torah and Derekh Eretz. That means that secular studies and worldly matters don't contradict Judaism. They go together. His philosophy on life was holistic. That he saw everything, all the different elements, you connect together. And he was very successful in founding schools. He founded schools, which in them they studied according to Torah and Derekh Eretz, also secular studies and also Torah studies. However, it is true that he was successful concerning creating a community where everyone is devoted to Torah and mitzvot. However, he wasn't so successful in creating spiritual leaders and great Torah scholars. Rabbi Azriel Hilzheimer, who lived at the same time, but he continued later on. He founded the seminary for rabbis in Berlin. And in that seminary, many great rabbis he studied there. For example, Rabbi Eliezer Berkovitz, from America, and also Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, who was a very important a rabbi in Israel. And also, it is interesting that the Lubavitcher Rebbe got his smicha from there. Of course, but he had a smicha before, but he got an official smicha from there. That was a story that... What? The Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Yeah.
And Rabbi Weinberg,
Made a book
Rabbi
on
Yechiel,
and he gave it to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said, "Okay, here, learn this."
Mhm.
And it was a recently book that he published. He came
That's
back,
right.
learned all of it, knew all of it and everything, and was quizzed on it and got everything correct. And even from his own, and even from the book that he gave him, he made his own commentary. And
That's
Machon
right.
Meir published it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That is a beautiful story about the smicha of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So this institution was a successful. It lasted for over 80 years until 1938, when the Nazis before, when they came to power, but when they did the Crystal Nacht, they closed the seminary, and that was a story of its own that perhaps we will discuss it someday. There was an attempt in 1934 to move the seminary to Israel, to Tel Aviv. And I actually received a document from the from the Tel Aviv archives that they agreed to give a plot of land to build a building for the seminary in Tel Aviv. That was a story of its own. I am now doing a very big research about that, but we're not going to talk about that now. But anyway, Torah and Derekh Eretz was it still is, a very important movement. It also inspired the philosophy of a Torah Umada, of a yeshiva university. Rabbi Norman Lamb wrote a whole book about a Torah Umada. He explores the historical foundations of a Torah and Derekh Eretz, and then he adds his own philosophy about a Torah Madar. A very interesting book. I highly recommended it. And we're going to talk about what is the center of our lives. So, why did I bring the discussion about a Torah and Derekh Eretz? Because that the critiques on this movement, he claimed that they saw Torah and Derekh Eretz as equal. However, this is not entirely true because also Rabbi Hirsch himself said that the Torah is the most important. The Torah is the center of our lives, but Derekh Eretz is an important part, but it is not the center. So we are going to talk about it this evening. How do we combine Torah and business, Torah and secular studies, Torah and academia? How do you combine everything together? So, what do you think?
I was thinking that the secular study is not separated from the Torah as always. Like in Torah, how can we say so? Because secular study includes like mathematics, chemistry.
That's right.
It's also included in the Torah. It says in the Torah when you build the Mishkan, this is the diameters, this is the space. It's algebra. You cannot
That's
have
right.
you cannot have like a knowledge in mathematics without building the Mishkan. For
That's right.
Also for chemistry, say for example, science. It says this is the volume of the ketoret. This is the
That's
the
right.
chemical that you have to use. And combining chemical, you cannot have this chemical without the knowledge of chemistry. So I think, not I think, I believe that the secular study is not included in the Torah. And those who separate this from the Torah is the one who doesn't want it to believe in Torah.
Beautiful insight.
And Vilna Gaon said that one who doesn't know one topic in secular studies, he won't know that 100 times more in Torah studies.
That's right. That's right. The Vilna Gaon, you said so, and the Rambam, Maimonides, he believed that one has to study secular studies as well. The Rambam himself was a doctor who wrote a few books on the topic of medicine, and he also studied the works of Aristotle, and it is true that he was said that it is almost impossible to study Torah without the knowledge of the secular studies. One has to know, as you said, algebra, geometry, in order to understand Eruvin, for example, the whole sugya in the Talmud, but you have to understand it, and not only
You're saying that yes, the Rav asked how do we combine them, and I would say the only way to combine them is to know what the purpose of combining them is. So obviously, if we have to prioritize, we're saying that why are we incorporating Derekh Eretz to begin with is for practical reasons, right? Because
That's right.
Worldly knowledge, we're not, we're learning it for a reason, and maybe it's to have scientific knowledge to build things or to learn business to be able to make a living, whatever it is. So, if a person knows why they're studying secular studies and they know that it is to support Torah and not the other way around, that they're learning secular studies in order to support their Torah studies. Oh, it is.
Absolutely.
They're not Torah studies, Torah lifestyle.
We're kind of learning the ways of God. We're learning like physics and biology.
Of course, and it depends on the person. There are a lot of people who are very scientifically minded, and the way they get close to Hashem is by studying science, and that's like, Vari Kaplan. I mean, I'm sure he's a Kabbalist.
That's right.
He was a physicist too, and I'm sure when he was studying physics, he wasn't just like it wasn't just science for him. He was seeing Hashem through physics. So
that's right.
And it supported his his understanding of Torah. So as long as a person knows why they're studying the secular studies and they do it in a for that reason, then it's totally possible to combine it.
Beautiful. The motto of a Rabbi Azriel Hilsheimer of a Berlin seminary was "B'chol adrachecha da'el." In all your ways, you should know God. But you have to you have to you study these secular studies in order to understand the Torah better. So the Torah is the center of our lives, and we study secular studies in order to understand the Torah. So a Torah is the purpose, and the secular studies, they are the means in order to achieve the goal of understanding a Torah. That is true. So concerning a Torah and the business, this is something very interesting. Rabbi Avraham Danzig, he wrote the Chochmat Adam and the Chayei Adam. He lived between 1748 to 1820, and he was a very important posek in Germany, and he was a merchant. And he had to travel a lot. And he wrote in his introduction something beautiful, that they even composed a song about it. Aharon Razael composed a beautiful song based on his introduction. And he said that it is true that I am a merchant and I travel far to Frankfurt and to Leipzig, but I travel not to become wealthy or to my goal isn't money. It is in order to bring a parnasah for my household. So, but even when I travel, I travel in order. Whilst I travel, so I travel, and I study Torah toch kedei. I study Torah when I am on my way, and then when I come back, my heart is with the Torah. So this is the important thing. So what he says that one should always remember that even when you go on a business trip, he took the Beit Midrash with him, and his heart was always in the Beit Midrash. Now, I would like to study together with you something very interesting. There's a question. There's a question based on Maimonides, based on the Rambam. We are going to study Rambam now. Something very interesting, which is connected to all what we are studying today. If we look at the top of page 4, where it says the laws of a Talmud Torah, chapter 3. Who wants to read it?
3 crowns were conferred
upon Israel: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. Aaron merited the crown of priesthood, as states, and it will be an eternal covenant of priesthood for him and his descendants after him.
Okay, now you skip to the crown of Torah.
The crown of Torah is set aside, waiting and ready for each Jew. As implied, the Torah which Moses commanded us is the inheritance of the congregation of Yaakov. Whoever desires may come and take it.
Okay, thanks. So the crown of Torah is awaiting for us, and whoever desires may come and take it. So how do we do so? If you look at the bottom of page 4, underneath source 13.
Continue.
Yeah, continue.
A person whose heart inspires him to fulfill this mitzvah in a fitting manner and to become crowned with the crown of Torah should not divert his attention to other matters. He should not set his intent on acquiring Torah together with wealth and honor.
Okay, thank you. So, when Maimonides says that one who wishes to be crowned with the crown of Torah should not divert his attention to other matters, what does other matters include? What do you think?
Well, maybe
You say it's like chasing wealth or pleasure.
that's what I want to say. Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good.
Studying science doesn't really count as other matters.
Okay, very good, very good.
Wasting time is-
So, when he says other matters, let's eliminate the options, okay? It cannot be that a Maimonides means that he shouldn't have a profession at all. Why? Because if you turn the page to page 5, Maimonides says that one is not allowed not to work. Everyone has to work. One can't rely on a charity. Who wants to read chapter 3, law 11?
Yeah, I'll read it. It is a tremendous advantage for a person to derive his livelihood from his own efforts. This attribute was possessed by the pious of the early generation. In this manner.
Okay, very good. Could you please skip to number 10? Anyone who comes
to the conclusion that he should involve himself in Torah study without doing work and derive his livelihood from charity. This equates Hashem's name. Dishonors the Torah, extinguishes the light of faith, brings evil upon himself, and forfeits the life of the world to come. For it is forbidden to derive benefit from the words of Torah in the world.
Thank you. So it cannot be that when Maimonides says that one should not, how did he say it? One should not divert his attention to other matters. It cannot mean not to work at all. It cannot mean that he shouldn't have a profession. Even somebody who wants to be crowned with the crown of Torah, he still has to have a profession according to Maimonides, right? And it cannot be that he's going to work like everyone else. Because what it says, underneath source 16, a person is obligated to divide his study time in 3. How is the above expressed? A person who is a craftsman may spend 3 hours each day involved in his work and devote 9 hours to Torah study. So even a simple craftsman has to work only 3 hours a day, and 9 hours he has to study Torah. So what is the big difference of someone who wishes to be crowned with a crown of Torah? What is the big big advantage about him. On one hand, he needs to work, but on the other hand, if he works, he is the same as everyone else. So where is the difference here? So what do you think? Where do we see, where does it come into practice that if somebody wishes to be crowned with the crown of Torah?
His intention?
That's right. The intention.
He's working so that he can learn.
That's right. And this is what a Maimonides says. If you look again, here you said he should not set his intent on acquiring Torah together with wealth and honor simultaneously. What is his goal in life? What is the center of his life? Is the center, is what drives him is money, wealth, honor, or he wants to be crowned with the crown of a Torah? This is a completely different mindset. So this, I believe, is what Rabbi Danzig was trying to teach us. That though he was a merchant for many years, he was a merchant who took the Beit Midrash with him on his travels. His heart was always in the Beit Midrash. Even when he worked for a profession, his longing, his heart was in the Beit Midrash. And this is a very important test. That everyone can test himself. What do we do during our free time? When we work, we don't have a choice. We have to work, right? But when we have a free time, do we use it in studying Torah, Yiddishkeit, mitzvahs? Or do we use our free time in other ways? In secular studies, in a culture, and amusing ourselves in different ways. Now, it is important to state that it is also important to do sport. It is also important to amuse ourselves. It is also important to listen to music and to do art. It is important. It is definitely important. Also, the Maimonides himself, he talks about if somebody feels that you're depressed, one must. And you play with a ball, and go to beautiful gardens. This is what he says. However, what is the center of one's life? Is the center of one's life the pleasures, the amusement, or is the center of one's life the Torah? And sometimes when one goes to beautiful places, this is in order that one is going to have strength to study Torah. Everything depends on what the intent is. There's a story about Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that he went to sleep and he told his wife that if anyone comes looking for me, you tell me that I am preparing a lesson. So she said, how could I tell people that you were preparing a lesson when you were going to sleep? So he said that when I am going to sleep, I am preparing a lesson because I'm going to sleep, so I'm going to have strength, so I could give a lesson. So, so in his eyes, everything was connected. His focus was on the study of a Torah, and it is important to say that he was a very important posek, and at his time there was no such thing as a Shabbos elevator, and he was asked to give a psak if one could use a Shabbos elevator on a Shabbat. So what did he do? He went to Binyan Klal in the center of the city, and he stood there for hours and hours looking at the elevator, because that was the only place in one of the only places in Jerusalem in those days that they had an elevator. So he studied it, and he tried to understand how it worked, and he spoke to technicians, and he spoke to scientists in order to understand also about electricity. He tried to work out how does electricity work. Is one allowed to use electricity on a Shabbat, and in what ways? So he studied the secular studies in order to determine what the halacha is. So what the Maimonides is trying to teach us that it depends where your heart is. Is your heart in studying a Torah? If so, you could be crowned with the crown of a Torah. Now, let's see an interesting story that illustrates this idea. Who wants to read it? It is at the end of source 6. It is from a tractate, a Ta'anit, page 21a.
Story of the great Torah scholars?
Underneath, yes.
Okay. The Gemara relates another story that involves an unstable wall. Ilfa and Rabbi Yochanan studied Torah together, and as a result, they became very hard pressed for money. They said, "Let us get up and go and engage in commerce, and we will fulfill with regards to ourselves." The verse, although there should be no needy among you, and we will no longer be complete paupers. They went and sat under a dilapidated wall and were eating bread, and when two ministering angels arrived. Rabbi Yochanan heard that one angel said to the other, "Let us knock this wall down upon them and kill them, as they abandoned eternal life, and the study to and engage in temporal life for their own sustenance." The other angel said to him, "Leave them, as there is one of them whose time of achievement stands before him, i.e., his time has yet to come." Rabbi Yochanan heard all this, but Ilfa did not hear the angels' conversation. Rabbi Yochanan said to Ilfa, "Did the master hear anything?" Ilfa said to him, "No." Rabbi Yochanan said to himself, "Since I heard the angels and Ilfa did not hear, I can learn from this that it is I whose time of achievement stands before me." Rabbi Yochanan said to Ilfa, "I will return home and fulfill with regard to myself the contrary verse, for the pool shall never cease out of the land." Rabbi Yochanan returned to the study hall, and Ilfa did not return, but went to engage in business instead. By the time that Ilfa came back from his business travels, Rabbi Yochanan has been appointed the head of the academy of his financial situation, and his financial situation has improved. His colleague said to Ilfa, "If the master had to sit and study instead of going off to his business ventures, wouldn't the master have been appointed head of the academy?" Ilfa went and suspended himself from the mast, Askaria, of a ship, saying, "If there is anyone who can ask me a question concerning a braita of Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Oshaya, and I do not resolve his problem from a Mishnah, I will fall from the mast of his ship and be drowned. Ilfa sought to demonstrate that despite the time had been spent in business, he still retained his extensive Torah knowledge.
Okay, thanks. So this is a very interesting a story, and many questions could be asked. I just want to ask you one simple question. Rabbi Yochanan heard the angels' a conversation, but Ilfa did not hear the conversation. Rabbi Yochanan heard it, and as a result, he decided to go back to the yeshiva, right?
Mhm.
Now, what do you think would happen if Ilfa would have heard the conversation? Would he have gone back to the yeshiva, or would he continued on to business? What do you think?
Could have been maybe the head of the academy.
If he would have gone back, so he would have been appointed, that's right. But what would have happened if he would have heard the conversation? Do you think that he would have gone back, or that he wouldn't have gone back?
Well, I mean, Rabbi Yochanan went back, so he might
That's
have gone
right.
back too as well.
But what would have happened if Ilfa would have gone back? If it would have been a reversed? So the answer is, according to Rabbi Margaliot, who wrote a very interesting book on a Sanhedrin called Margaliot Hayam, which is interesting, that he was also a businessman, and he combined it with the Torah. So what he said actually represents his lifestyle. So what he said was that Ilfa, even if he would have heard the angels, he wouldn't have gone back, because but he believed in a combining together Torah and business, and he had no intention in becoming a Rosh Hashiva. He did not dream in becoming a Rosh Hashiva, because the style of life that he preferred was a combination between a Torah and business together. And it is very interesting that Ilfa remained a very big Talmid Chacham. He remained a great Torah scholar, even though he did not go back. And in many places in the Talmud, his teachings are quoted, but he wrote books, which is a Talmidim he studied, and he taught Torah as well, but he did it in a way that he combined the Torah and business together, that his heart was always in the study of the Torah. Now, I just want to conclude with something interesting. I am going to ask you a halachic question. Turn to page 3, please, to a source 8. Okay, if there's a concept called Torato Umanuto. Torah is his trade. Okay, meaning it's someone who devotes his life to Torah study. Okay, now the Tosfot asks a very interesting question in a source 8. He asks, we say a Birkot Torah in the morning, right? The blessings of a Torah. But we go and work in a profession most of the day, and then we come back and we study Torah. Do we have to say again the blessings of the Torah? Seemingly, there was a hefsek. There was a
Interruption. Yeah, stop.
interruption. There were two parts of his day. There was a part of the day that he worked in his profession, and the other part he studied Torah. So seemingly, one would have to recite the blessings again, right? So what do you think? What do you think is the answer?
You don't have.
You don't have to, right?
It applies the whole day.
And the question is why?
Because
Why does it apply the whole day? That is the question that we're trying to find out.
Because ideally, Torah study, I mean, I don't know, not a lot of people who are like this, but ideally Torah study should fill all the gaps in our life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Someone's idle for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
waiting at a bus stop for 10 minutes, ideally you should be learning.
Right.
Unless we're doing something else. But, so, because that's the case, when we make a Birkat Torah and it sort of covers all the Torah that we're going to learn
Mm-hmm.
throughout the day. And it's not like a bracha we make on food, which is a bracha achronah. There's no bracha achronah.
Right.
Because again, it's 24 hours.
Nice.
So even in the night,
Okay.
unless you sleep for at least a half hour. But, yeah, so the bracha is sort of like meant to be like a once a day thing and covers everything.
Okay, very nice, very nice. A beautiful explanation. The Rosh says there's something very interesting. By the way, the Yatur is based on the Rosh in many places. So he says, in the source Yaten, he says something very interesting. He says that when people say the blessing of the Torah in the morning, and then they go to a business, they go to their profession, their intention is always on the Torah. The intent that when we are going to come back from the day at work, we are going to come back and return it to the study. So he says that always the intention is on the study. The heart is always there. And he says something very interesting. He says that what is a true Talmid Chacham? He says that a true Talmid Chacham is someone who has a profession or some kind of a business, just in order to sustain him, not necessarily the intention to be rich or very wealthy, just to lead a normal life, okay? But in every moment that he has time, he tries as much as he can to study a Torah. And he studies Torah. So the Rosh says that he is considered as someone who a Torah is his trade. And this is something very interesting, because that sometimes we think that only someone who completely devotes his life to a Torah and doesn't learn any secular studies and he doesn't have any profession, he is considered someone who a Torah is his trade. But according to the Rosh, and of course according to Maimonides, it is not the quantity of time that you study Torah, it is the quality of time, it is the quality of your life, it is the where your heart is. And then we could answer the question, the Torah and the Derekh Eretz, what is the center of our lives? Someone who wishes it to be crowned with the crown of Torah, who wishes the Torah is going to be as a trade, even when he deals with the Derekh Eretz, worldly matters, the Torah is always the center of his life. Yeah.
What about a case where somebody wins the lottery? I says, millions of dollars shekels now, so I don't need to work.
That is great. That is great.
So
he can.
He can say,
Of course.
I want to sit and learn for 10 hours a day, whatever it is.
That is great. That is, if somebody has the ability to sit and study the whole day, this is your best. But one has to.
The Rambam says that also according to the Pirkei Avot, right?
If there was a time of the life,
if Torah is not accompanied by work, will eventually be negated and he'll lead to sin.
There was.
He's going to steal it from others, but if he has money, he's not going to steal.
The Rambam himself had an agreement with his brother,
the diamond or sold gems, precious gems.
Who sustained him, who he supported him, he gave him the opportunity to study Torah. But one day, the ship of his brother sank in the ocean, and he lost all his wealth, and the Rambam had to work. He had to work, and then he taught himself how to be a physician, and he had to work. So even the Rambam himself, it says, but if one is able to be supported in a respectful way, and he is not not a burden for anyone, including his wife, so one can devote his time to study Torah. Now, nowadays it is something. It is unhealthy that there are those who put the responsibility of a parnasa just on the wife. She has to work in order to support them, whilst they just sit and study Torah. This is not. It is not a proper way according to the Rambam. According to the Rambam, and also according to the halacha, someone has to support his wife. A husband's responsibility is to support his wife, and that is what he assigned in the ketubah, not the other way round. but it could be understood that sometimes in some periods in one's life when one is an avrech, this is okay. One can start up like a young couple after they get married. It is very healthy that the husband studies for a couple of years in the yeshiva, and then it goes and goes into business or has a profession. That is okay, but as a ideal of living one's life in the intention that others are going to support him the whole life, if this isn't a healthy. The best thing is to, according to the Rambam, according to what we studied of the Rabbi Danzig, that he also had a profession, and he was also a very serious Talmid Chacham. He was able to write so many important books that are studied today. The Mishnah Berurah, he quotes him a lot. Rav Danzig was a very serious Talmid Chacham. So the question is, what is the center of our lives? So, any questions? Any insight? Yeah.
Can we learn the Tosfot on source 8?
Yes. The source, the Tosfot says something like this. He says there's something very interesting concerning a sukkah. In a sukkah, when somebody builds a sukkah, he has to say a blessing l'sheva b'sukkah on every single meal that he has, right? Every time when you enter the sukkah, so you have to say the blessing, right? So the question is, what is the difference between the blessing of the Sheba Sukkah and the blessing that we say on studying a Torah, that we don't have to say every single time Lasok b'divrei Torah. This is the question that we asked earlier. We just say it in the morning and that's it. So the Tosfot says that there is a difference. Okay? When one eats in the sukkah, there's a set hour, right? For breakfast, for lunch and dinner. But when one studies a Torah, there is no way set hour that one only studies Torah then. He is obligated to study Torah all the time. It says, "V'hagita bo yomam b'layla." So when one is focused the whole day in studying a Torah in every free moment that he has, even if he doesn't study Torah in every free moment because he works and he has got other things that he deals with, but if his mindset is on a Torah study, even if he doesn't study Torah the whole time, it is considered as if he is sitting and he's studying the whole day. So this is what the Tosfot says. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and Chodesh Tov.